There's a job where you work with the dead. Every single day. It's quiet, controlled, and far away from the world most people live in. And yet, this job can pay up to $70,000 a year. But the money comes with something most people could never handle. You're not just working long hours. You're working with bodies that are no longer alive. Sometimes, those bodies don't look the way you'd expect. You deal with chemicals that can harm you, in rooms most people would never enter. And you do it all knowing this is someone's final memory. So the question is, why would anyone choose a life like this? An embalmer is the person responsible for preparing the dead, so the living can say goodbye. They don't just handle bodies, they preserve them, restore them, and in many cases, recreate a peaceful version of someone who may have died in a very different way. The job exists for one reason: death is often too raw, too sudden, and too difficult for families to face directly. So embalming became a way to soften that reality, to turn loss into something more bearable. In the United States, only a relatively small number of people choose this path, just tens of thousands across the entire country. It's a profession hidden behind closed doors, inside funeral homes and mortuaries, far from everyday life. Most people will attend a funeral, but never think about what happens before the casket is opened. And that's exactly why the job feels invisible. Becoming an embalmer isn't simple either. It requires formal education in mortuary science, years of apprenticeship, and passing strict licensing exams. But more than anything, it demands emotional control, the ability to stay calm in a place where most would feel uncomfortable. Because at its core, this job isn't just about preservation. It's about creating one final image. One last moment that families will carry with them for the rest of their lives. On average, an embalmer in the United States earns between $47,000 and $70,000 a year. For some, that might sound reasonable. But for the nature of the job, many would expect far more. Because this isn't just a technical profession, it's physical, emotional, and at times, deeply uncomfortable. So why isn't the pay higher? Part of the answer lies in demand. Death is inevitable. But the number of people trained, and willing, to do this work remains relatively small, yet stable. It's not a fast-growing industry, and most funeral homes operate on tight margins. Which means salaries often reflect sustainability, not difficulty. But money alone doesn't explain why this job exists. Because embalming isn't truly about the person who has died. It's about the people left behind. When a family walks into a viewing, they are not looking for perfection. They are looking for peace. A version of their loved one that feels calm, untouched, almost like they're simply asleep. And that moment, just a few minutes standing beside a casket, can shape how someone remembers a person for the rest of their life. Without embalmers, that moment could be very different. Raw, unresolved, and sometimes, too painful to process. So this job fills a space most people never think about. It stands between reality and acceptance, between loss and closure. And even though it may not be the highest paying career, it carries something far heavier than money: the responsibility of someone's final memory. A typical day as an embalmer doesn't really have a fixed beginning. It can start with a phone call in the middle of the night, or early in the morning, when the world is still quiet. On the other end, there's only one message: someone has passed away. Within minutes, they prepare themselves and head out to bring the body back. There's no time to hesitate. Because this is part of the job. Back at the funeral home, the process begins in silence. Everything is methodical, controlled, and precise. First, the body is carefully cleaned and disinfected. Not rushed, not careless, every movement is deliberate. Then comes the most technical part of the job. Fluids are replaced with preserving solutions to slow down natural changes. It's a process that requires focus, training, and steady hands. Because even the smallest mistake can affect the final result. But not every case is the same. Some arrive peacefully. Others carry the marks of illness, time, or trauma. And in those moments, the work becomes more than just procedure. It becomes restoration. Using specialized techniques, they try to recreate a calm, natural appearance. Something that allows a family to recognize the person they loved. Hours can pass without a single word spoken. Just the sound of quiet tools. And careful breathing. Then comes the final stage. Dressing, styling hair, and applying cosmetics. Not to change who the person was, but to present them in a way that feels gentle. And familiar. By the time they step away, the room feels different. Still quiet. But no longer heavy. And yet, the hardest part isn't what they do with their hands. It's what they carry in their mind. Because at the end of the day, they don't just prepare bodies. They prepare goodbyes. Not everyone can do this job. In fact, most people wouldn't last a day. Because this profession isn't just about what you see. It's about what haunts you afterward. Those who choose this path are usually calm, meticulous, and have good emotional control. Some come from a family tradition. Others are drawn to it out of curiosity, or a desire to help others. But over time, the job will change you. You begin to see death not as something distant, but as something constant. An inevitable reality. And that change can be very profound. Many embalmers work alone for long hours, in quiet, enclosed spaces. No conversation, no distractions. Just you and your thoughts. And sometimes, those thoughts don't just stay at work. They follow you home. Sleep can become erratic. Stress builds up gradually, almost unnoticed. And emotional isolation, essential for the job, can begin to affect personal relationships. Some embalmers say they feel isolated. Disconnected from people who don't understand what they experience every day. Because how can you explain this job to someone who's never seen it? There's also the constant exposure to chemicals and the pressure to perform the job perfectly. Mistakes aren't just errors. They become lasting memories for others. And that responsibility never completely disappears. In a society like the United States, where death is often concealed, avoided, and rarely discussed, embalmers exist behind the scenes. Handling what others choose not to see. They carry a part of reality that most people prefer to ignore. And while the world continues to move rapidly, they remain, working in silence. Not only preserving bodies, but also bearing the emotional burden of farewell. So what does the future look like for embalmers? In many ways, it's more uncertain than you might expect. Because while death itself will never disappear, the way people deal with it is already changing. In recent years, more families have started choosing cremation over traditional burials. It's simpler, often less expensive, and requires less preparation. Which means, in some cases, embalming is no longer necessary. And slowly, that shift is affecting the demand for this profession. But that doesn't mean the job is disappearing. Because for many families, the final viewing still matters. That last image, that last goodbye, is something they are not ready to let go of. And as long as that moment exists, there will always be a need for someone to prepare it. What about technology? Could machines, or even AI, replace embalmers one day? The answer is not completely. Because this work isn't just technical. It requires judgment, precision, and a deep understanding of human emotion. You're not just preserving a body. You're shaping how someone will be remembered. And that's something algorithms can't fully replicate. Instead, the future may look different. Fewer embalmers, but more specialized ones. Better tools, safer chemicals, and more advanced training. A quieter profession. But no less important. Because no matter how much the world changes, there is one thing that doesn't. People will always need a way to say goodbye. They don't bring people back to life. They don't change what has already happened. And they don't erase the pain that comes with loss. But in a quiet room, away from the world, they do something most people will never see. They take what is broken, what is difficult to face, and gently make it easier to remember. Not perfect. Not artificial. Just peaceful. Because in the end, people don't remember every detail. They remember the feeling. The last image. The final moment they had to say goodbye. And that moment is often shaped by someone they will never meet. Someone working in silence, without recognition, without applause. So maybe this job isn't about death at all. Maybe it's about memory. About protecting the way we remember the people we love. And making sure that when we close our eyes, the last image isn't the hardest one to hold on to.